Hey everyone, Yasin here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about what I wish I knew about drawing the hand. Okay, so I've made a bunch of hand tutorial videos before, but I figure each time, maybe I'll cover something that I missed to cover or something I learned since then, so it's still probably useful. Alright, so one of the things I was told when about how to draw the hand is draw like thousands of hands, draw hundreds or thousands of hands. I think that's true. That actually does work a lot. But the thing that I found that helps the most is to draw your own hand and draw it from life, like not photos. And the reason is, if you draw your own hand, you can kind of move it and see exactly what's going on and how big the forms are. So drawing from life is really important, and especially your own hand, drawing your own hand. Now, with that said, there are certain things to look for because drawing your own hand could be kind of overwhelming, especially if you start like, let's say I wanted to draw my hand and I started like maybe at the thumb. I kind of go down and I'm just sort of drawing it. This is how not to draw your hand. You don't want to be doing these kinds of like or at least I don't feel like it's as helpful to do these kinds of things where you're paying a ton of attention to just basic measuring, because all I'm doing here is drawing what I see in front of me and not necessarily getting better at drawing hands from imagination. And this is more my goal is more to be drawing things from imagination and not just drawing from what I see, because then it's like, okay, if I was to replicate this, would I be able to? I don't know. Maybe. Like, I think it's not harmful to do this. I just don't think it is the best way of of doing things, to just like, okay, there, I did one hand and now I will do more. I think what works better is to actually learn the shapes that you that kind of build a hand, and then how to replicate those. So this way, I can do stuff from imagination much more easily. And I tend to use, when I draw hands, I tend to use my own hand as reference a little bit anyway. Not always, but often. But it's not something where I'm copying it this way, because that would just, it takes a while, and also it's just not that efficient. So I try to break things down. And the way you do this fast is to learn kind of the components of a hand. And one of the things that's really important, at least for me it was important, is to learn the creases. So, on your palm, you have like the lines of stuff fortune tellers might read or whatever. You have your lines. If you can, when I first saw them, I thought of them as kind of like details, which didn't really matter. But after a while, you learn that, or I don't know, after a while, you just, okay, so these are the points where the hand folds. So that's what I think it's better to think of them as. Like, these are the areas where the hands fold. So you can divide them into sections. So we've got like this section here, the thumb section. We've got this section here, which, you could include this finger, you could kind of stop it here. but I found like sometimes it's okay to include that, because when the index finger, like if you move these three fingers, at least for me, this finger can stay in the same position. But if I move these fingers, it's harder to not move these fingers as well. Like these three kind of seem like in one group, and this one's in its own group, and this one in its own group. But I've also noticed that people's hands are very different. Like the movement is quite different depending on who you're talking to. So, I guess it's like find what works for you. But yeah, I try to think about the creases and like, okay, so this is, if I bend my pinky down, this is where that bend is going to happen. Like pinky might be like this. It's going to come down. And then this finger tends to move with it. And these two can kind of stay the same. So understanding these creases can kind of help, especially with this thumb. Like as this thumb moves here, you'll get this crease as where that bends. So it's kind of important to learn about the creases of the hand, I think, anyway. And then the other big thing is to understand the shapes that you use. So the hand has a lot of this shape. It's not a rectangle. It's not a square. It's slightly wider and a bit narrower at the base. And it has a bit of a curve to it. So if you looked at it kind of at an angle, it's got a bit of a curve to it. Like that. It's kind of like wedge shape. So that shape's super important, and it's in a lot of angles of the hand. So if I am drawing a hand from a side view, it's kind of like, I think of this shape, and then I think of the arm like this, and then it goes down, then you have the fingers, and then you have the thumb here. So you get this little drop down at the wrist, and you get this type of shape, but you can see in it there's this wedge shape here. And from most of the views of the hand, I start with this type of shape. Now it gets thinner at the base, but then you add the thumb and that thickens it out. So then with the thumb added, it does feel a bit more boxy, like a box. But if you bent your thumb so that it is going with like this way, within that form, you'll see that it resolves into more of this wedge shape, like that. So that's a very important shape that I use a lot. So drawing from life is very important, but also drawing from imagination. And I think the best way to do this is to actually animate. As weird as it sounds, I've been doing this lately. Here are some of my animations that I've done, and it's really helped to kind of try drawing from imagination, but then constantly reference yourself to make sure you're checking yourself. And by changing the view, you're actually drawing many hands, and learning about how the structures build. So that's definitely something you can do. And I think that's actually like probably one of the fastest ways to get better at drawing. Probably not just hands, probably anything is through animation. I did these just in Procreate. But another way is just, drawing tons of hands. And after a while, getting a handle on these things. Now, this is kind of the basic shape I use, which is sort of a mitten. You got your thumb. You've got this shape, so I start with this shape. You got your thumb, and you got the fingers. I usually group the fingers together. And so you can break it down into one shape here, one shape here for the thumb and the fingers, and then the arms, or the arm. And remember that the arm, like, you see how it's not coming out dead center? Like, I didn't draw the hand and then stick the arm like that. That's not how it works. The arm touches more like that with the thumb on the side. So you get this little chick chick thing going on. So that's important. I exaggerated it in these. Usually it's a little more subtle, a little more rounded out, but it doesn't hurt to exaggerate things that are there. So that's one of the things. The other thing is what I already covered from the side view, how your arm goes and then there's a little dip down from your wrist into the hand. And then you've got this like wedge shape. Like that. And then you've got the fingers. So by thinking of these in these three sections, it just makes things easier. And once you do a lot of hands, what you can start to do is to simplify it further into, sometimes I simplify the hand like this. That's often what I do in figure drawings, where you've got, again, this sort of mitten shape, but you can see how loose it is, but also it's quite gestural, and it gets the idea across. So, for instance, if I was going to do a pointing finger, I might do something like this. And that, to me, tells the story of what this hand is doing. Of course, it looks weird, but if I was to flesh it out, I know roughly like what's going on. So keeping things very simple can help, because what it does is it makes it easier for your brain to make questions, I guess. So, for instance, if I have nothing and I have to imagine something, it's very hard. But if I have something and I have to imagine something, it's not so hard. So if I do this and I say, okay, well, what is that? Let's say I say this is a nose. Now I'm gonna start to automatically make judgments about this. Like, maybe there's a mouth, maybe there's an eye here, but I've got something to base these other determinations off of. So when I draw a rough hand that has the gesture, it has the feeling, but it's like scribbly like that, I can look at this and say, well, okay, maybe the little finger's doing this, then this is the thumb. I don't have to stay perfectly, accurate to the rough sketch, but something like this, like the other fingers are going to be here. And then I can start to make, if then statements like, well, if this is where the other fingers are, then they're probably going at this angle. Maybe this finger is going to be that long, this finger is going to be like that, and you're going to get like a bit of creasing here, and then the hand is going to go down like that, maybe. And so I've got, you know, and maybe this is in shadow. I've got stuff to work off of by building a kind of organic shape. So yeah, that's really important. Okay, so when doing something like a fist, I start with this type of wedge shape. I keep it shorter. For my own hand, I have like a hand shape like this, and then the fingers are, you know, here somewhere. I don't really like that shape, so I tend to like compress it a bit for my own characters. That's just what we can do because we're artists. We can do whatever we want. But anyway, so what happens with, I was going to do a fist, but let me just quickly do one more thing on the open hand. So you've got this mitten shape, right? This is a pretty severe curve for the fingers. Then it gets like less and then less as you go towards the palm, but it's still a curve. So when you draw the fingers in, you want to keep that relationship where the fingers have, there's a curve to them here, and then here there's also a curve, but it's not as drastic as this curve. And then here is where the middle of the hand is, like the crease, and that kind of follows a curve as well. Then you've got the thumb. All right, so, and then for the palm thing that I mentioned, the creases, it's pretty easy once you understand where the creases go, because they're not just random. So you've got a crease that comes from the little finger side, goes up, and it points to the, like, it points to a line that goes to the index finger. Like that. Like, look at your own, your own hand. Then you have the thumb crease that goes past the thumb, so you get a little bit of a gap between your thumb and the crease line. But then from here, you go across. And this, you know, I guess these lines don't go all the way for different people. But anyway, that's how I think of it, is you got a line going this way, and then this. So kind of like this shape and that shape. So it's just 2 lines or 3 lines, depending on how you want to see it. And that makes things a little more easy. Anyway, back to the fist. So the fist, you get this, then you get the fingers, and the fingers always, as you, like, they have this thing where when you open your hand, they spread out. When you close them, they go in. So if hands are open, or the fingers are, the hand is open, the fingers are out, you've got this like spreading out. And then when the hand is closed, they're going in at that angle. So we get the thumb on top, and then the fingers going towards the middle like that. And you often get a shadow in this area. So that's important. Another thing that's important is when you, if you're going to do like a punching pose, it helps to make the hand kind of curved. Especially the more intense the punch is, like the more you clench your fist, the more dynamic this feels, and the more like see if I curve these lines like this, then it feels more like the fist is, there's a lot of tension there. So that helps. And so basically I'm just thinking of this section with all the knuckles, then this section with the thumb, and then this section with the palm. But yeah, see this, the tension here by these curved lines is much stronger than if I was just drawing it very relaxed like this. If I did this. Doesn't feel strong, doesn't feel that powerful. And then you can also indicate the knuckles using a bit of shadow. Tend to use these like those type of lines like to indicate tone, and that can help. So like that's the biggest part. Like I can't make up for, I can't tell you, you know, to like I can't make up for a lack of mileage in drawing hands. So if I draw, if I tell you like, well, this is what you do and draw hands and do this and do that, that's gonna work to a point, but I can't make up for the fact that you still have to draw hands if you want to get better at drawing hands. That's kind of the most important thing. But I can just, you know, give you observations. Like, for instance, the wrist, when it bends, the pivot is like here. So what that means is if I took this wrist from, let me flesh it out a bit more because it's okay. Let's see. Thumb. Oh, and from the side, the thumb is kind of pointing towards us. So the thumb is like, if I put my hand to the like flat like that, the thumb kind of points slightly up into the side, but it's like the fingernail, and then the fingernails of these ones are pointing up. So that's something to keep in mind if, you know, I don't know if you notice that or not. But anyway, so the pivot, that's what I was talking about. It's not here in the middle like this. It's here like this. And what happens is you get this, the skin stretches over this as it bends. But it's at least to me, it feels lower, the pivot. But I'm not 100% confident. That's what I heard, and it seems about right. It's like, yeah, but I guess it's important to take everything with a grain of salt, and see, you know, whether it resonates with you or not. So yeah, draw lots of hands, draw them from imagination, but reference yourself as well and use that to check. Do animations. Quickly, I should talk about, you know, difference between men and women, or more masculine and more feminine, I should say. I've got very feminine hands. So more masculine are more boxy shaped, and more feminine are more tapered, like that. And they also get thicker as they go down. So it's kind of like the tentacle method of drawing the arms that I talked about, how you start with like this type of shape, you can break it down into like arm, bicep, upper arm, and lower arm. For the hands, kind of works the other way, where you got the fingers. Now, and then the nail. So for the nail, I tend to only draw like, keep the line kind of light, and I draw like that, so it's there, but I didn't do this kind of, like I didn't do this. I guess you could if you want, but I like to keep it more subtle, and then if it's really close, I'll get that, I think, I forget what it's called, lunella? Not sure. That white part. So it gets more white here, a little more reddish here, and then again more white the tip. And that kind of gets you fingernail. What else? I don't know. Mostly the thing is what I covered already, which is, you know, when I do figure drawings, break everything down into this kind of mitten shape. Do that a lot. I think it's not a bad thing to just get used to drawing, and try to, if you can, not just draw the hand like this as a shape, but include the wrist, because that's one of the most important parts, is really how it connects, how, you know, you get positions where you got the hand, you get these type of sort of elegant positions of the wrist, and by drawing fast and loose and just sort of being okay with generally getting things in the right place, then after I can always add more detail, especially when I can look at reference and figure out, okay, where exactly are things going. But yeah, it's something where, like, if I want to draw a fist and I do something like that, to me that's not a bad fist. It's just it's not defined. But by scribbling stuff, I'm not doing this kind of slow measuring thing where I'm just taking everything in a very slow way, and I'm not blocking out the big form. I'm just getting the big forms down as fast as I can. If I was doing, oh, and I also do this with the fingers sometimes as the fingers are separated. Let's say I was drawing like a Spider-Man thing. What I'll do is I'll do something like this. So it's loose and I get the gesture of it. I again keep that kind of shape for the palm, get the thumb, and get the fingers, but these are connected, so it's all like one thing, and then I break it down as I go, or I refine it as I go. Maybe for some people that's just ugly, they don't want to do it that way, but for me it really helps. And if I'm painting, sometimes, you know, what you can do is like block out the hand kind of like this, where you see, I basically have everything there. It's just not perfect. So if I was to add more detail to this, it's easier having this down to kind of figure where things should be than if I had nothing down to begin with. Like, see, like those fingers weren't long enough or whatever, but just having them there helped me make the observations that I needed to, of like what looks wrong, what do I need to adjust. And so yeah, just having these basic shapes really helps. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.